My name is Marty Weeder. I'm Director of Economic Development here with the City of Grand Prairie, Texas, where I've served a little over 2 years. And I'm also serving as the first chairman of something that's still relatively new, the North Central Texas Economic Development District.
I really appreciate the time you're sharing with me today, and we're talking about something that's your new passion in life and business and all that sort of stuff. How did that all happen?
It's actually been a long-term passion. I've been interested in economic development since I was at the North Central Texas Council of Governments as an employee back in the 1980s.
Wow.
And at that time, the group was thinking about getting into economic development, but saw that we have such a dynamic region, there was really no need to do that because we have so many different cities and counties that are aggressive. And since then, too, we saw economic development corporations be created as an entity under the state. So wasn't much of a need. Nevertheless, COG, being the good group that it is, kept its eye on the fact that our region was one of the only ones really in the entire 5-state southwestern area that was not designated as an economic development district. And through the United States Economic Development Administration of the U.S. Department of Commerce, those same 16 county or same county collection of counties that are a part of a regional council or a metropolitan planning organization can also then create an economic development district as long as they go through a strategic planning session, a comprehensive strategic planning exercise.
I see.
And so our region chose to do that a couple of years ago because we recognized it would make sense to do that.
So describe what the organization looks like today as you've developed it, bylaws, that kind of stuff.
Well,
briefly.
Lucille Johnson, the key staff member at the North Central Texas Council of Government, she's the one who's really marshaled this whole thing, did a tremendous job with the SEDS.
It's not a pun or anything.
No. She's done a tremendous job. She really has. She was the one who led us through that whole SEDS, Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy process. And she was the one who then also carried that all forward after that had been approved and after the Economic Development Administration had signed off on that, to take it forward to the executive director or the executive council at COG, the board of directors, executive board, had to pass a resolution of support, recognizing that the strategy met what they thought was really the demand that was seen in this region. And then by doing that, they essentially sent that off to the EDA. EDA approved it and said, okay, now you can put in place a set of bylaws. She oversaw that, had met with the same counterparts of mine that had met over several months that put together somewhat of a draft set of bylaws, and the board approved that, and we got started.
And and again, correct me if I go down the wrong path.
Okay.
I believe what you've got here is you've amalgamated all the EDCs and cities throughout the North Texas area, in essence, at least in the immediate area.
Chambers of Commerce, as well as community colleges, colleges and universities,
Workforce.
and business people. That's correct. So we've got kind of have to throw the net pretty wide and include a lot of people in this mix rather than just specific economic development practitioners.
So, according to my research, it ranges everywhere from small town city entities to the big guys.
We've got
Dallas and
Denton. Yes, we've got a breakdown of certain percentages of cities from smaller communities that are given a seat at the table.
I got you.
Early on, there was a desire to reach out to the counties and ask them to pass resolutions of support. And now it's been opened up since, where the board, the executive board at COG, pretty much made the decision, let's just leave it open to all 16 counties if they'd like to have a delegate. So really all of the counties are represented if they want to be, but then there's a certain collection of different cities. If you've got somebody that's an executive or an economic development director that wants to get involved, all they've got to do is contact Lucille. If there's an opening, she'll certainly bring it to the board. If there's not, we'll put them in line in the queue to be able to come on and be a part of the board. Everybody, they're public meetings, so everyone's welcome when we meet.
Very good.
Yes.
So is there, Is there any room for stakeholders, business,
Yes.
this type thing?
Yes, they made sure and included spots in there too for private development representatives, people that are involved either in consulting or working with economic development.
Okay, that's great.
Yes.
And about how many openings are there in that situation, or is that still in flux?
There are 3 spots that are dedicated for business. There's, as I recall, one that's open. There's another where there's an individual we just learned last week is going to be opening up a seat. So there's some opportunity for business people to come and explore and be a part of that.
Okay.
But it's a group. Let's admit it. It's in its infancy. Yes, it really is.
And I would envision that as time passes, that you'll have some turnover,
Oh,
both
yes.
in the executive board as well as throughout the different cities and some of the corporations you might want to deal with.
Well, the COGS executive board has a detailed process of its own.
Okay.
We only have our board of directors, but yes, we're already having some churn. Have a couple of my counterparts, one in particular that I know from an adjoining city that's just retired.
Uh-huh.
He had served on the board,
Oh.
so his seat's going to be opening up. So
I
yes,
see.
there's plenty of opportunity. If somebody really gets interested in this group, all they've got to do is submit their name and kind of keep an eye on what's going on, and
Raise a hand.
there'll be a chance. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, that's exciting.
It is.
So what's the number one thing you guys are going to focus on first? Obviously, there's a plethora of opportunities to do things.
There are. We had to, certainly the whole thing that's going to govern us the whole time is going to be that strategic plan that was put in place. But the whole purpose for going after this to begin with was recognizing that one of the things when a community makes an application to the Economic Development Administration for some help, maybe in helping with an industrial park
Some
in
grants.
some way, some grant monies for infrastructure, that there was a requirement that you be in a region that had a SEDS.
I see.
And so that was something that we really couldn't, for the most part, do in this region. Arlington and Dallas both had done one as cities, so they could, but really most all the rest of the region couldn't. So that's changed. So really we're focusing now on trying to make people aware from the start of the fact that, hey, this exists now, this has been approved, and if your community meets the qualifications, there's help that's available. Lucille Johnson, the staff member I mentioned, has gone out and met with a number of community leaders and cities, economic development corporations, counties, and provides administrative assistance to those who are wanting to make application to the EDA for grant monies.
There are some cities that don't have EDCs in place.
That's exactly right.
Which they still have workforce, still have transportation capabilities, but just don't have the wherewithal to afford to have a person on staff.
That's what's so good about this, is to have somebody of Lucille's history and experience with COG to be able to come out and sit down with them firsthand. She can also link them if there's a need to Cornell Wesley, who's kind of our delegate for this whole region, based up in Oklahoma City and Austin, who represents several states for the EDA.
Okay.
But for the most part, she can kind of bring them all together and give them advice early on. And that's what's nice about our board meetings, is it gives us a chance to hear who she's been meeting with and where they stand in the application process. And we're thrilled that we've already got a victory. We want to celebrate those. We've talked about, we want to make sure and begin to document those and push those out for cities. It's great that the group that really kind of was the leading edge, Navarro County, Corsicana, is going to be the first recipient. They've already made application to EDA.
Terrific.
And
What does that mean to them?
well, they've had an industrial park that had some acreage that could not be accessed by sewer, as I recall. They had a need to, had somebody actually interested in coming and locating in that industrial park, but they were going to need to extend utilities to be able to make it work. And so that's where early on Lucille began working with them, putting that application together. They ran it by Cornell, looked like it would be approved, submitted, and it has been approved. So in the coming months and years, they'll be implementing that. And so it's great for smaller cities. Really, everybody in the region can go after it. But like you mentioned earlier, for cities that don't have economic development staff members, Lucille can sit down with city managers and their public works directors and others and help put all that together so they can make application.
Marty, share with us where those grants could possibly come from. Federal government, private government combination partnerships, or what?
Partnerships need to make submittal. It helps to have that, but they're all federal funds.
I see.
There's certain classifications of EDA grant monies that are available through the U.S. Department of Commerce, and you just have to go through the information, figure out which one is applicable to your need, and submit the application. But in all cases, they require a match of some kind. And so that's where if you can be creative and find where it's not just a city, maybe there's there was one group that was looking at one. I understand they're reformatting it a little bit, but they had a bunch of different property owners and businesses coming together, realizing that could meet a need.
Wow.
One of the ones that Lucille reported on to us the other day is an existing incubator that's in DeSoto that now is working on an application to the EDA to be able to get some funds to put in place materials for training to make more people aware of what this incubator can provide.
Very good.
And so that's the kind of thing, is find out what the need is, but they're all federal grants.
I get you.
They're all federal.
Okay. So it's actually money coming back from us.
That's that's a chart.
Yeah, but I know how that works.
Yeah.
Most people kind of figured it out since they get to adulthood, and business and that kind of stuff. But
Well, our region up until now is kind of just
kind of out of the picture, right?
That's correct, and I think you heard me speak a couple of months back. We shared a chart that showed that, for instance, the Alamo area council of governments, the capital area in Austin, and the one at the Houston-Galveston area have all had much more in the way of grant monies because they had met that SEDS requirement in the past.
Right.
And more cities were able to go after that.
No,
Well,
this
now we can too.
This doesn't diminish the central group at all.
Oh no.
In fact, weren't they the very first to form? Way back when?
I'm not sure which was the first, to be honest with you,
Well,
but
the one for us.
North Central Texas was the first in Texas.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
North Central.
So, and that's great, and they've been doing a terrific job.
Yes.
However, you're absolutely dead on. They're focused here.
Yes.
And their staff, although very excited about what you're doing, and Lucille and all the executive board, they're happy that you're doing it because, to be candid, you can focus better than they can focus time-wise and closer into the need, if you get my point.
Well, they do a great job, and they're doing the job they were meant to do in bringing the whole region together and serving to facilitate the needs of the member governments.
Right.
Doing a great job, but they can't. You can lead a horse to water. Truly, the rest of us have got to step out there and take that drink.
Sure.
And so we appreciate the way they showed leadership in facilitating the SEDS process.
Right.
But yes, now it's up to each of the individual communities to step up to the plate, and with the help of Lucille and Cornell Wesley, if necessary, then go forward and make those applications and take some initiative.
Yeah. So I would assume that with all this reach that you now have, and the fact that Texas is growing by leaps and bounds, people, corporations, and individuals are moving here from all over the United States just because the market's hot and the housing has gotten tight. But the real issue is employment.
Yes.
And I sense that you guys are kind of focused on trying to provide resources for corporations who are interested in finding just the right people for the right jobs. Am I correct in that?
More and more, that's a major issue. We had kind of a task force group a couple of weeks back, invited all the board members to come together and talk about our specific goals, and really the one that's risen to the top is trying to take the workforce data that so many different people have and try to ensure that it's all up to date and in the hands of the people that need it, that maybe are looking at our region and aren't aware of the fact that we've got a tremendous workforce.
It strikes me as kind of a hard thing to do. You've got all these different organizations and situations going on where they're trying to find jobs for folks, and those are the employment groups, you know what I'm saying? The workforce guys, the state, and then the corporations themselves are reaching out using things like Indeed and all the other things that you can do over the internet. And I had somebody suggest this to me. Why not go to those corporations that are taking applications and having things filled out for all these corporations and ask them for the data that would be very close to the date that they assembled it?
Sure. It's a great idea, and that's actually happening on an annual basis through another group in the region that does a survey of all the businesses and asks them, for instance, what are the skills you're not seeing that need to be met?
Well,
That's
and that would
being
help
handed
the
to schools.
colleges,
That's
particularly
correct.
TCC and Dallas and all those folks that are doing courses that are targeted at not just, what's the right word? Not just a degree, but something that's more specialized.
Sure. Well, what you're describing is what we're talking about, is trying to link some of these existing resources, maybe flesh out a little bit more the ones that are current, or how we could make the ones we've got more current, and make sure everybody's got access to them. I think one of the things we've learned early on is that some of the smaller communities with smaller community colleges, outlying counties, may have more of that data and are able to share it more freely than maybe what we've been presently doing in the middle of the region. We just got to make sure and push that information out.
It could be the bigger market is the more magnitude of the collectability in the database burdens and those kinds of things.
We've got a lot of people working to that end. We just maybe need to try to communicate a little bit more together. It's something we hope to facilitate through the EDD.
So, Maureen, the big question is, by the end of next year, where do you hope this organization will be? What's your target, basically?
Well, I think we're already getting there. I'm not too much longer before I'll complete my term and we'll have a new chair. I wanted to kind of be there to help kick it off. We especially wanted to make sure we got off on our feet and in the air in the way we should. The biggest thing I would view is, if you're asking me what I think would be a success, is to make sure we have a lot of cities throughout the 16 counties that have received the information and are aware that this is a resource that they can now go after. I think there's still a lot of them that just maybe haven't heard yet and haven't begun to think what they can do in light of that that could change their community for the better when it comes to exactly what you were stressing, jobs.
And, and companies moving into their smaller cities, because that's where land is, that's where a lot of the folks have moved to over the last couple of decades, thinking they're getting out into the country, and now the country's moved to them, no, cities moved to them, and now they're trying to figure out what their properties are worth, what their businesses are worth, finding those folks that will carry on the family effort, maybe, those kinds of things. Yeah, the larger corporations, the telecoms, the defense industry, those folks, they have ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys, just like everybody else. But when you're talking about mom and pa who decided they wanted to go out to Azle, for example, and start a carpet cleaning company, and they need, to the extent that they need to hire 2 people, but have no resources short of putting an ad in the newspaper, you know, this is where putting those resources right straight into the hands of the economic development director or coordinator, whatever the title is in the city. And making sure that those people who are in business in those communities have access to that and have knowledge of it.
Well,
it's right down to the street level.
The knowledge part, I think, is what's most important. And we touched on this at our board meeting the other day, that I think one of the things I'd like to see us do at some point, whether it's during my term or I'll continue to serve on the board even after I'm not chairman, so in future years, is do some type of a summit to where we can bring people together, share the victories, those who have gotten grants already, use those as poster child type projects, put them up on the wall and make sure everybody's aware. Look at what Corsicana's done. You know, hopefully look at what DeSoto's done and what Lancaster, Texas is considering going after some grant monies for an industrial park for infrastructure. And if we've got some good success stories, I think that'll spur a lot of interest and help carry the word all the way down to Somerville County, hopefully,
That'd be great.
and Johnson County and out to Hunt County.
Yeah.
and up to Wise County.
Wise, yeah. Ooh.
Palo Pinto. Let's cover them all.
And do you think the people that are going to be buying houses out in Walsh are going to need this information?
Well, I think everybody's going to need it. You know,
They will.
that's the one.
They will.
That's the one. You know, we talk about getting it out into the hands of the far reaches of the region, and we talk about getting it in the hands of smaller cities. But let's face it. Part of the reason why I was so enthused is that I feel like Grand Prairie, we're going to have opportunities in the years to come where we're going to be able to go after some grants, and it makes sense. It's not limited to those cities, so it makes sense for all of us.
Well, and that's a good example. I mean, Grand Prairie's been growing steadily now for the last 15, 20 years, and have added just recently a water park, all kinds of things. Gee, this little furniture store thing opened up down here.
Got an IKEA, yes.
You know, start the car. Anyway, sorry, went off on a tangent.
We're grateful, we are. But that's the beauty of this, is it applies to everybody.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is Willow Park part of your effort so far?
Willow Park, I don't know if they've plugged in. They will be.
They should
certainly.
be. Yeah.
Sure. I'm not familiar with whether Lucille might have spoken to them. I don't know.
Probably.
Yeah.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
Anyway, truly appreciate the information.
My pleasure. Thank you for helping get the word out.
Right. Well, just so you know, all the different social medias, you know, it all goes out there.
Very good.
So
We appreciate that.
we're targeting the cities with this particular information,
Very good.
and they've got a lot of them got Facebook pages, and they're allowing citizens and/or folks like us to publish on their page.
Well, thank you.
So that'll get it into some of them that they'll go, oh, wow, hey, Marty said the right thing.
Need to know where to go, and we'll link them to Lucille,
That's right.
and look forward to seeing their grants come through when it reaches the board level,
Right.
and applying them.
So can you share with us, just as the last thing, how to reach you?
Well, you can certainly. I'm a member of the board, so
Right.
there's no reason really to reach out to me unless somebody wants to. You're certainly always willing, and I'm always willing to take your emails if you have a question here at the city.
Okay.
It's my first initial M, my last name, which is spelled Wieder. So first initial, last name at gptx.org.
That's great.
And if somebody wants to email me, we'd love to visit, and I can link them to Lucille or to Cornell Wesley or whomever.
Okay.
And if they've got a board-related issue, we'll bring that forward too.
Thank you again.
Okay? Thank you very much.
And say goodbye.